No one must know, the nun warned. But what the mountain man did next shocked everyone. The small village of Pine Ridge had always been a quiet, peaceful place. Nestled between tall mountains and dense forests, it was a place where everyone knew each other, and life moved slowly. Children ran freely along the narrow paths, women carried baskets from the market, and men worked in the fields or the surrounding woods. It was the kind of village where secrets rarely stayed hidden, yet some mysteries managed to survive the test of time. One such mystery was whispered about with fear and caution, and it centered on a man who lived alone high in the mountains. His name was Jack Carraway, though most people simply called him the Mountain Man. He had been in the village for as long as anyone could remember, though few truly knew much about him. Jack was a tall, strong man, with a weathered face that told stories of countless winters braving snow, storms, and the harsh mountain winds. His eyes were sharp, always alert, and his movements were quick and sure, as if he belonged more to the wild mountains than to the village itself. People often saw him from afar, collecting firewood, hunting for game, or walking along the cliff paths, but almost no one dared to approach him. The villagers had long learned that Jack was private and preferred solitude. Some whispered that he had chosen a life of isolation after losing his family in an accident years ago, while others imagined that he was hiding something no one should know. Children were warned to stay away from the mountain paths he frequented, and even grown villagers often averted their gaze when he passed by. Despite this, there was a strange respect for him. Jack was kind when he needed to be, often leaving gifts of fresh meat or herbs on the village steps for those in need. But he never spoke much. It was one crisp autumn morning when Sister Bernadette, the nun who had cared for the village for decades, called a meeting in the village square. She was a tall, serious woman with a gentle but firm voice that carried authority. Her presence demanded attention, and when she spoke, even the boldest villagers listened. That morning, her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a small, worn book. She gathered the villagers, her eyes scanning the crowd until they rested on the familiar faces of men and women, young and old. "I must warn you," she said in a low, urgent tone. "There is a place in the mountains, a place that no one must go." The villagers exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered to each other, trying to guess what she meant. "It is not for the living," she continued. "It is dangerous, and it carries a burden that should not be disturbed." The children shivered at her words, imagining haunted caves or hidden treasures cursed by spirits. The adults, though more cautious, felt a similar fear. Sister Bernadette had always been wise, and her warnings were rarely taken lightly. Curiosity, however, is a stubborn thing, and for Jack Carraway it was almost impossible to ignore. Unlike the villagers, Jack had never feared the mountains. He had spent his entire life climbing the rocky slopes, hunting in the dense forests, and exploring paths few others dared to tread. The very idea of a hidden place, forbidden and mysterious, called to him like a distant drumbeat. After the villagers dispersed, murmuring and glancing nervously at the mountains, Jack remained at the edge of the square, listening to the echo of Sister Bernadette's warning. "No one must know. No one must know," he repeated quietly to himself, testing the weight of her words. They felt heavy, as if the mountains themselves had whispered the warning through her. But instead of fear, Jack felt a flicker of determination. He had always trusted his own judgment, and he believed he could face whatever lay hidden without harm. Over the following days, Jack prepared for his journey. He sharpened his knives, packed dried meat and herbs, and studied the maps of the mountain trails he had walked so many times. The villagers noticed him less and less, some assuming he had gone deeper into the mountains for hunting or gathering firewood. Sister Bernadette, meanwhile, watched from the church window with worry etched on her face. She had seen signs in the past, signs that curiosity could sometimes lead to disaster. She prayed silently, hoping Jack would choose caution over recklessness. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the jagged peaks and painted the sky with brilliant shades of orange and purple, Jack stood at the edge of the village, looking up at the mountains. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. His breath formed small clouds in the cool air, and his heart beat with anticipation. Somewhere up there, hidden among the rocks and forest, lay the secret Sister Bernadette had warned about. He could almost feel it calling to him, whispering in the wind. Despite his excitement, Jack was not careless. He knew the mountain's dangers, the sudden storms, the slippery cliffs, and the wild animals that roamed freely. He moved with care, stepping softly on the familiar trails, keeping an eye out for anything unusual. Birds flew overhead, and the sound of a distant stream guided him deeper into the wilderness. With every step, his mind replayed Sister Bernadette's warning. He did not want to ignore it lightly, but he could not resist the pull of the unknown. As night fell, Jack reached a narrow ridge overlooking a dense valley. The moonlight spilled over the rocks, illuminating a faint opening in the mountainside, barely visible unless one knew where to look. His heart raced. This had to be it. This was the entrance to the place no one must know about. He paused for a long moment, listening to the night sounds, the rustle of leaves, the call of an owl, and the distant howl of a wolf. Everything felt alive, as if the mountain itself was waiting. Finally, with steady hands, Jack stepped closer to the hidden entrance. The air grew cooler, and the scent of earth and stone filled his nostrils. He felt a mixture of fear and excitement, a strange combination that made every nerve in his body alert. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the moment where curiosity and courage met. Whatever lay beyond the entrance, he knew that he would face it with the same resilience that had carried him through countless winters and storms. In that silent moonlit night, the mountain man stood at the threshold of a secret that had been kept from the village for generations. Sister Bernadette's warning echoed in his mind, but Jack felt ready. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and disappeared into the shadows of the mountain, leaving the village behind. What he would discover inside that hidden cave would change everything, but for now, the mountains held their secrets close, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. The village below slept peacefully, unaware of the journey beginning above them. Only the wind whispered of the mountain man and the secret he was about to uncover, a secret that no one had dared touch for decades. Jack's adventure had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The cave entrance was narrow, almost hidden behind a thick curtain of vines and rocks. Jack paused for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. The air inside smelled earthy and damp, carrying a strange mix of moss and something older, something that hinted at stories long forgotten. He lit a small lantern he had carried in his pack, the soft glow illuminating rough stone walls and a floor covered with pebbles and dust. Every step he took echoed softly, as if the cave itself were acknowledging his presence. He moved carefully, feeling along the walls with his hands to avoid tripping over hidden rocks. The tunnel twisted and turned, narrowing in some places and opening into wider chambers in others. Jack had explored many caves in his life, but this one felt different. It was silent in a way that was almost unnatural. The wind outside whispered through the mountain trees, but here nothing moved. Even the animals seemed to respect this place, giving it an air of mystery and sacredness. As he ventured deeper, Jack noticed something unusual. The walls were not bare. They were marked with carvings. At first they seemed like random scratches, but as he examined them closely, he realized they told a story. The carvings showed men and women living in the mountains, hunting animals, and building shelters. There were images of children playing, people carrying baskets, and gatherings around small fires. It was like a window into the lives of those who had lived here long before the village existed. Jack traced the marks with his fingers, marveling at the skill and care with which they had been made. Whoever had created these images had wanted them to last, and they had succeeded. Moving further, Jack stumbled upon an old wooden chest, half buried under a pile of rocks. He brushed the dust off and slowly opened it. Inside were objects that seemed almost impossible to believe. Ancient tools, jewelry, and worn-out books with yellowed pages. Some of the items looked ceremonial, used for rituals or important events. The books were fragile, their covers cracked, but the words inside were still legible. They were written in a language that Jack didn't fully understand, but some of the simpler words and drawings suggested that they were journals, documenting the lives of the people who had once lived here.
Jack's heart raced.
He had found a hidden part of history that no one in the village had ever known. These artifacts were not only valuable in terms of knowledge, they were a connection to the past, a story that had been waiting for centuries to be discovered. He carefully examined each item, noting their shapes, sizes, and materials. Some tools were made from stone and bone, while others were crafted from metal, worn smooth from use. The jewelry was delicate, decorated with intricate patterns that showed a level of craftsmanship Jack had never expected to find in such a remote place. As he explored, Jack felt a growing sense of responsibility. These items were not just discoveries. They were treasures that belonged to the people who had come before him. They were part of a history that could easily be lost if not treated with care. He knew he could not simply take them to the village. The villagers might not understand their value and might even destroy them out of fear or curiosity. Jack made a decision. He would document everything he found, sketching the carvings, photographing the items, and writing detailed notes in his own journal. He would preserve the story of the cave without revealing it to anyone who might not appreciate its importance. Hours passed as Jack worked. The cave seemed to go on forever, with tunnels leading to hidden chambers filled with more carvings and artifacts. Some rooms had small alcoves, each containing objects carefully arranged as if left for someone to find. There were simple clay pots, small figurines, and woven mats, all remarkably well preserved. Jack felt like an intruder in someone else's world, but he also felt honored to be allowed to witness it. He wondered who these people had been, what their lives were like, and why they had chosen to hide this part of their history in such a secret place. At one point, Jack found a small, carved figure of a woman holding a child. The carving was delicate, almost lifelike, and it seemed to radiate a sense of protection and love. Jack held it in his hands carefully, imagining the person who had created it, and the child it represented. He thought of the villagers in Pine Ridge, and he realized that this cave was a reminder of human resilience and care. These people, long gone, had lived through hardship, just as he had, and had left behind their story for those who were patient enough to discover it. Jack took a deep breath and looked around. The cave had revealed more than just objects. It had revealed a way of life, a community that had thrived in isolation. It reminded him of his own solitude in the mountains, the quiet life he had chosen. He felt a connection to these people, a shared understanding of survival, courage, and respect for nature. The more he explored, the more he realized that the cave was not cursed, as Sister Bernadette had feared. It was a sanctuary, a place of learning and remembrance. Night had fallen outside, and the wind howled softly through the mountain trees. Jack's lantern cast long shadows on the cave walls, making the carvings look alive in the flickering light. He paused for a moment, listening to the silence. It was a calm, sacred silence, filled with the whispers of the past. Jack felt a deep sense of peace, knowing he had found something extraordinary. He knew that his life, and perhaps the life of the village, would never be the same. Yet Jack also understood the importance of secrecy. The nun's warning had not been about superstition. It had been about protection. Some truths are too fragile or too powerful to be revealed carelessly. Jack made a mental note to keep the cave's location hidden, just as the people before him had done. He would study the journals, examine the artifacts, and learn as much as he could, but he would reveal nothing until he was certain the knowledge could be shared safely. As he prepared to leave for the night, Jack carefully placed the items back in their alcoves, covering them with rocks and dust to keep them safe. He retraced his steps through the tunnels, feeling the cool air brush against his face as he approached the entrance. The moonlight greeted him once again, and he stepped out into the crisp mountain air, feeling a mixture of triumph and humility. He had discovered something remarkable, yet he knew that his journey was only beginning. Jack returned to his small cabin at the edge of the village, exhausted but exhilarated. He cleaned and sorted the notes and sketches he had made, carefully cataloging each item. He felt a sense of purpose, a mission to protect the story of the cave. Over the next days, he would return to study more, always cautious, always respectful of the secrets the mountains held. The villagers remained unaware of what Jack had found. They went about their daily lives, worrying about crops, weather, and the routines of the small village. But Jack carried a secret, one that connected him to the past and gave him a new understanding of his place in the mountains. Sister Bernadette's warning echoed in his mind, but now it felt less like a threat and more like guidance. The cave was a treasure, not just of objects, but of knowledge, history, and human spirit. Jack knew that one day the story would be told, but for now it belonged to him and the mountain. He had become a guardian of history, entrusted with the care of a secret that had survived centuries. And as he gazed up at the mountains, feeling the chill of the night and the warmth of discovery, he knew that the real adventure was just beginning. Days passed after Jack's first exploration of the hidden cave. The village continued its quiet routine, unaware of the secret that lay high in the mountains. Jack, however, could not stop thinking about what he had discovered. Each night he sat by the fire in his small cabin, carefully reviewing his sketches and notes. The carvings on the walls, the journals, and the artifacts haunted his thoughts. He felt a responsibility not just to preserve them, but also to understand them. Who were these people? What had their lives been like? And why had they hidden their existence in a place so difficult to reach? Sister Bernadette, meanwhile, had not stopped worrying. Her instincts told her that Jack was drawn toward danger, and she feared that curiosity could bring disaster. One morning she decided to confront him. Clutching her prayer beads and wearing her long gray habit, she made her way up the path to Jack's cabin. The cold mountain wind tugged at her habit as she climbed, but she did not falter. When she reached the cabin, she found Jack sitting outside, carving a small piece of wood with care. "Jack," she called gently but firmly, "I must speak with you." Jack looked up, his sharp eyes meeting hers. He rose and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "Sister Bernadette," he said, "what brings you here?" "I am worried about you," she replied, her voice steady but carrying a hint of fear. "I warned the villagers about the mountains, about the secret you have been drawn to. You must understand, some things are dangerous and not meant to be disturbed. You could get hurt, or worse." Jack nodded slowly. I understand your concern, he said. But I have found something extraordinary. It is not harmful. It is history. It belongs to the people who came before us, and I want to learn from it. I would never take it for myself, nor would I let anyone destroy it. Sister Bernadette's eyes narrowed slightly. She had seen many brave men in her lifetime, but Jack was unlike any other. You must be careful, she said, her voice softening. Curiosity is a gift, but it can also be a danger. Secrets are sometimes kept for a reason. Once they are revealed, the consequences can be unpredictable. Jack listened, feeling the weight of her words. He respected her wisdom, but he also knew that he could not ignore the call of discovery. The cave and its treasures had chosen him in a way, and he felt a sense of duty to understand it fully. I will be careful, he promised, but I cannot turn away. I must continue. Sister Bernadette studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Very well, she said, but promise me that you will not reveal this secret to anyone else. The villagers are not ready, and I fear their curiosity could bring harm to the place. Promise me, Jack. Jack looked her in the eyes, seeing the worry and care in her expression. Ah, promise, he said. No one will know. But not yet. Relieved, Sister Bernadette nodded and turned to leave, but she paused at the edge of the cabin. Be careful, Jack. The mountains watch over those who wander too far. With that, she walked down the path, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. Over the next few days, Jack returned to the cave. Each visit revealed something new. He discovered small, hidden chambers filled with tools and objects that showed the people had been highly skilled and intelligent. Some tools were designed for farming, others for building, and some seemed ceremonial. The artifacts told a story of resilience, innovation, and community. Jack realized that these people had survived in the mountains for generations, leaving behind knowledge that could teach him, and perhaps one day the village, how to live in harmony with the land. But as Jack explored, he also began to notice subtle signs that someone, or something, had been in the cave before him. A few items were slightly moved, and the dust on the floor showed faint footprints. It was not clear when they had been made, but the realization made him cautious. He double-checked the path in and out, making sure it was hidden from view. The last thing he wanted was for anyone to stumble upon the cave and disturb the fragile history within. One evening, Jack returned to the village for supplies. He moved quietly through the streets, careful to avoid drawing attention. Children played along the paths, shouting and laughing, unaware of the secret Jack carried. The adults greeted him politely but did not ask too many questions. Jack had learned long ago that curiosity could be dangerous, and he preferred to keep his thoughts to himself. That night, while studying his notes, Jack felt a strange unease. The mountains were quiet, but something about the air felt different. He could not explain it, but he sensed that the secret he had discovered might soon come into contact with the village in ways he could not control. He resolved to stay alert, knowing that knowledge and secrecy were both fragile. The following morning, Jack noticed signs that someone had been on the ridge near the cave entrance. Broken branches and displaced rocks suggested a person or an animal had passed that way. His heart raced. Could someone have discovered the cave? Had the nuns' warning been ignored? Jack decided to investigate cautiously. He packed his supplies, carrying his lantern, notebook, and a few tools, and made his way toward the ridge. As he approached the entrance, Jack's sharp eyes caught movement in the trees. A figure was climbing slowly, trying to stay hidden. Jack froze, considering his options. He could confront the person, but he also knew that revealing the cave to an unprepared villager could be disastrous. Instead, he waited, hiding behind a boulder and watching. the figure emerged from the trees, a young man from the village, curious and unaware of the dangers. Jack observed him closely, noting the confusion and excitement on the young man's face. He realized that secrecy was fragile. Even with the best intentions, curiosity could lead people into situations they were not ready for. Jack decided to act carefully. He stepped out from behind the rock and called gently, "Stop! You should not be here." The young man froze, startled, and turned to see Jack standing tall and calm. "Who are you?" the young man asked, fear and curiosity mixed in his voice. "I am someone who knows these mountains well," Jack said. "And I warn you, you must leave. There is a place here that is dangerous if disturbed. Promise me you will turn back." The young man hesitated, glancing toward the cave. His eyes were filled with curiosity, but he sensed Jack's authority. After a long moment, he nodded slowly. "I promise," he said. "I won't tell anyone." Jack watched him go, feeling a mixture of relief and concern. The encounter reminded him that the secret he guarded was not just about discovery. It was about responsibility. Knowledge without care could lead to unintended consequences. He returned to the cave, more determined than ever to continue his exploration, but also more cautious. Over the next weeks, Jack carefully documented everything he found in the cave. He sketched carvings, described artifacts, and wrote detailed notes about the layout of the tunnels. Each day brought new discoveries, hidden chambers, ancient tools, and evidence of daily life long forgotten. Jack realized that the cave was more than a historical site. It was a window into the past, showing how humans had adapted, survived, and thrived in the harsh mountain environment. Yet the weight of secrecy remained heavy. Jack understood that sharing the knowledge too soon could put the cave and its history at risk. He continued his promise to Sister Bernadette, keeping the location hidden from the villagers, while preparing for the day when the knowledge could be revealed safely. Through it all, Jack felt a growing connection to the people who had lived here before him. Their struggles, triumphs, and care for one another resonated with his own life in the mountains. He realized that his role was not just as a discoverer, but as a guardian. The cave had chosen him, and he would honor that trust. The mountains remained silent witnesses to Jack's journey. Each time he returned to the village, he carried the weight of history on his shoulders, along with a sense of awe and responsibility. The secret of the cave was safe for now, but Jack knew that the mountain would not wait forever. One day the hidden world would intersect with the village in ways that could shock everyone. And when that day came, Jack would be ready. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and earth from the mountains. Jack had spent the night planning his next trip to the cave. Something in his heart told him that his discoveries were approaching a turning point. Over the past weeks, he had explored nearly every chamber he could find, carefully documenting the carvings, artifacts, and hidden objects. But now he felt that the mountain had more to reveal, something larger, more important, and perhaps even life-changing for the village below. Jack packed his bag with lanterns, notebooks, a small first aid kit, and some dried meat for energy. He also carried a sturdy rope, just in case he encountered any steep drops or obstacles. He checked his maps, tracing the paths he had traveled before, and then set off toward the hidden ridge where the cave entrance lay. The village was waking slowly behind him. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the sound of roosters filled the air. But Jack moved quickly and silently, his eyes sharp and aware of every detail in the terrain. As he climbed higher, Jack noticed that the mountain looked different from previous trips. A recent storm had shifted rocks and branches along the trail, making the path more difficult to navigate. Some of the footholds he had used before were now slick and dangerous. He paused to steady himself, taking in the view of the valley below. The village appeared peaceful and small, almost fragile from this height. Jack's mind wandered to Sister Bernadette and the warning she had given him weeks ago. He understood her concern more than ever. One wrong step could be disastrous, yet he pressed on, driven by curiosity and the need to uncover the mountain's secrets. Reaching the entrance of the cave, Jack noticed something unusual. The wind had blown loose leaves and dirt into the opening, partially covering it. The disturbance seemed recent, as if someone had approached without realizing the danger. His pulse quickened. Could it be that the villagers had finally followed his tracks, or was it simply the storm shifting things? Either way, Jack felt a surge of caution. He adjusted his lantern and entered the cave, moving slowly to examine every step. Oh, inside, the familiar shadows and carvings greeted him. But Jack had a sense of anticipation. The cave seemed alive in a new way, almost as if it were aware of his presence. He explored the chambers carefully, documenting each detail. As he reached a narrow passage he had not fully investigated before, he found it led to a wider chamber, a place that seemed untouched by time. The walls glowed faintly from the light of his lantern, revealing carvings unlike any he had seen before. They depicted groups of people working together, teaching children and building homes. There were images of rituals, celebrations, and acts of care for one another. The artwork showed a society that valued knowledge, courage, and community. Jack's eyes widened as he explored further. In the center of the chamber lay a stone altar, worn smooth by centuries of use. On it were objects that seemed ceremonial: small carvings, decorated stones, and clay figures. He realized that this chamber was the heart of the ancient community that had lived in these mountains. Everything he had discovered until now had led to this moment. He felt a deep respect and humility, knowing that he was standing in a place sacred to those who had gone before him. Hours passed as Jack explored and documented the chamber. He sketched the carvings, wrote descriptions of the objects, and photographed everything carefully. Each discovery deepened his understanding of the people who had lived here. They had survived in a harsh environment through skill, knowledge, and collaboration. Their lives were reflected in the carvings and artifacts, telling stories of resilience, love, and intelligence. Jack felt a connection to these people, as if their spirit was alive in the chamber, watching him, guiding him. Just as he was about to leave, a loud rumble echoed through the cave. Jack froze, his heart pounding. Rocks had shifted in the narrow passage, blocking the exit he had used to enter. Dust fell from the ceiling and the air felt heavier. Jack realized that the storm outside may have caused a small landslide inside the cave, creating a dangerous situation. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves, and searched for another way out. After a tense moment, he discovered a narrow side tunnel partially hidden behind a pile of rocks. It would be risky, but it seemed like the only way forward. Jack tied his rope securely around a stalagmite and moved carefully through the tunnel. The walls were rough and damp and the space was tight, but he pressed on, knowing that turning back was not an option. After what felt like hours, the tunnel opened into another chamber, a smaller one but filled with even more carvings and artifacts. Jack's excitement returned, tempered by caution. This chamber revealed details about the daily life of the people, including their hunting practices, methods of storing food, and ways of creating tools and clothing. There were even carvings of animals, mountains, and rivers, indicating a deep respect for nature. Jack realized that the knowledge in this cave could teach the villagers how to live in balance with their environment, just as the people before them had. As he studied the artifacts, he noticed something unexpected. a series of shallow engravings near the floor, almost hidden. Upon closer inspection, he realized they were markings for a map. The carvings indicated pathways through the mountains, safe routes, and areas to avoid. It was a guide left by the ancient people for those who would follow, a clever way of passing knowledge down through generations. Jack marveled at the foresight and intelligence of the community that had lived here. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the cave. Dust and small stones fell from above. Jack froze, realizing that the cave was unstable in some areas. He had to be careful, but he also understood that the discoveries he had made were too important to abandon. He decided to continue his documentation, working as quickly as possible while remaining aware of the risks. Hours later, Jack finally prepared to leave. He carefully placed the artifacts back in their original positions, covering them with dust and rocks to protect them. He retraced his path through the narrow tunnels, keeping his lantern close and his eyes alert for any sign of danger. Finally, he emerged into the fresh mountain air, exhausted but exhilarated. The sky was painted with the colors of sunset, and the valley below glowed in the warm light. Jack felt a sense of accomplishment and awe. He had uncovered the heart of the ancient community, a place that held stories and knowledge lost to time. On his way back to the village, Jack's thoughts returned to Sister Bernadette. He realized that the warning she had given him was not just about danger. It was about responsibility. He now understood that the knowledge he had discovered could be a gift, but only if it was shared carefully and wisely. The villagers were not ready yet, and he had to protect the cave from harm until they were. As Jack approached the village, he noticed that the wind had carried news of his absence. A few villagers had gathered, curious and worried. They called his name, but Jack waved and continued quietly to his cabin. He did not want questions tonight. He needed to reflect on what he had learned. That night, Jack recorded every detail from his journey in his journal. He sketched maps, described the artifacts, and wrote about the carvings. His hands were sore and his mind was full, but he felt a deep sense of purpose. The cave had revealed its secrets, and he had the responsibility to honor them. In the following days, Jack continued to prepare for the next phase of his exploration. He understood that his discoveries could one day help the village, but only if handled with care. The cave had taught him lessons about courage, patience, and respect for history. And while the villagers were unaware of what was happening high in the mountains, Jack knew that the mountain's secret was safe, for now. But even as he worked, Jack could not shake the feeling that something was approaching, a moment when the secret he guarded would intersect with the lives of the villagers. The cave had revealed much, but he sensed that its greatest revelation was yet to come, and it would change everything. The morning was bright and cold, with sunlight streaming over the peaks and warming the village below. Jack had spent many days preparing for what he knew was coming. The cave had revealed secrets, history, and knowledge beyond what he could have imagined. But something in the air told him that the time for caution was ending. The mountains, which had kept their secrets for centuries, were now ready to share them in a way that could no longer be ignored. Jack packed his supplies carefully, checking his lanterns, ropes, notebooks, and the maps he had created. Each artifact he had discovered was documented, and each carving had been carefully sketched. He felt a deep sense of responsibility. The knowledge he carried was powerful. It could teach the villagers about survival, courage, and respect for nature, but only if shared in the right way. As he climbed the mountain, Jack noticed that the valley below had changed. Villagers were gathered along the trails, pointing up at the ridge, whispering anxiously to each other. Something had stirred their curiosity, and Jack realized that keeping the secret any longer might no longer be possible. A landslide caused by the recent storms had blocked a major path that villagers used for gathering wood and herbs. Now they were stranded in the higher parts of the village, and some had even begun to wander dangerously close to the mountain slopes. Jack's heart raced. He knew the cave's hidden paths could provide a safe route through the mountains, but the challenge was enormous. Guiding a group of villagers through narrow tunnels, steep cliffs, and unfamiliar trails, all while keeping them safe. He moved quickly, descending from the ridge and signaling to the villagers to follow him. At first, many hesitated, unsure of the mountain man they had long thought to be mysterious and distant. But when Jack's calm, confident voice reassured them, they began to trust him. The journey was difficult, the mountain paths were slippery from the rain, and the air was thin and cold. Jack led the way, using ropes and handholds to guide the villagers along narrow ledges. Children clung to their parents' hands, and adults gripped rocks and branches to maintain balance. At one point, a small boulder shifted dangerously near a young girl, and Jack acted quickly, pulling her to safety just in time. His knowledge of the terrain, honed over decades of living in the mountains, saved lives repeatedly during the journey. Finally, Jack led the villagers to the hidden cave entrance. For the first time, they saw the place he had kept secret for so long. Their eyes widened in awe and disbelief. The cave was more than a hollow in the mountain. It was a sanctuary of history. Jack guided them carefully inside, showing the carvings, artifacts, and hidden chambers. The villagers gasped at the intricate carvings on the walls, depicting generations of people living, learning, and celebrating in harmony with the mountains. "This was here all along?" an elder asked, astonished. "Why did no one tell us? Some things are meant to be protected until the right time. I promised Sister Bernadette that no one would know until it was safe. And now it is time." As the villagers explored the cave, they discovered the depth of knowledge preserved within. There were tools showing methods of farming and hunting, jars for storing food, and even simple maps of the mountain paths. The carvings told stories of courage, cooperation, and resilience. Some villagers found objects that once belonged to children, while others marveled at small figures and jewelry, evidence of the creativity and intelligence of the people who had lived here long ago. Sister Bernadette arrived shortly after, having followed the villagers' progress from the village below. When she saw the scene, her face softened. Jack had fulfilled her greatest hope. He had protected the cave while ensuring the knowledge within would be shared responsibly. She approached Jack, her eyes full of pride and relief. "You were right," she said quietly. "The secret? It was not dangerous. It was a gift." Jack nodded. "It was never meant to harm anyone. It was meant to teach, if we were ready to learn." The villagers worked together, carrying some of the tools and artifacts carefully to safer spots within the cave so that everyone could see them without risking damage. They asked Jack questions about what each object had been used for, and he explained patiently, connecting the past to their present lives. He showed them the maps, guiding them through the tunnels in a way that revealed both safety and knowledge. By the time they emerged from the cave hours later, the villagers had a new understanding of their heritage and a renewed respect for the mountains. Word of Jack's discovery spread quickly. The village, once quiet and routine, became a place of excitement and curiosity. People came to see the carvings, the tools, and the artifacts, learning how their ancestors had survived and thrived in the same rugged environment. Jack, the quiet mountain man, became a teacher and guardian, guiding the villagers with wisdom and care. Children followed him on safe hikes, learning how to respect the mountains. and adults began to understand the importance of patience, observation, and careful planning. Yet the most remarkable change was not in what they learned, but in how they felt. The villagers had always seen the mountains as a place of danger and mystery. Now, with Jack's guidance, they saw them as a teacher and a protector. They realized that the mountains held knowledge and history, waiting for those who were brave and respectful enough to explore carefully. Sister Bernadette, watching the villagers and Jack, felt a deep sense of peace. Her warning had not been ignored. It had been honored. Jack had respected her guidance while also following his own courage and curiosity. Together, they had transformed a secret into a source of wisdom and community. That evening, as the sun set behind the peaks, Jack stood alone at the ridge once more. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth. He looked down at the village, now quiet and calm, and felt a sense of fulfillment. The secret of the cave had been revealed safely. The villagers had learned and grown, and the history of the mountains was preserved. For the first time in years, Jack felt that his long years of solitude had been purposeful. He thought of the people who had once lived in the mountains, whose carvings and artifacts had guided him. He felt a connection across time, as if they were smiling at his careful stewardship. He realized that courage, respect, and responsibility were the true treasures of the cave, even more than the carvings and tools. Jack returned to the village later that night, quietly slipping into his cabin. The villagers had settled, talking in hushed tones about the incredible discoveries and the bravery of the mountain man who had guided them. Jack smiled quietly to himself. His promise to Sister Bernadette had been kept. The cave had been protected, and the village had been given a gift they would never forget. In the days that followed, life in the village began to change. People worked together more closely, shared knowledge, and respected the mountains in ways they never had before. Jack continued to explore and study the cave, but now he did so with the understanding that his discoveries were not just for himself. They were for the entire village. The secret that had been so carefully guarded for generations was now a living part of the community, teaching lessons of courage, curiosity, and care. And through it all, Jack the Mountain Man had become more than a hermit. He had become a guardian, a teacher, and a bridge between the past and the present. As the seasons changed and the mountains turned from green to white with winter snow, the villagers never forgot the lessons of that hidden cave. They spoke of Jack with respect and admiration, remembering how he had saved lives, preserved history, and shown them that courage and knowledge must always be guided by care and responsibility. The Mountain Man had become a legend, not because of mystery or fear, but because of his heart, his wisdom, and his unwavering dedication to protecting what was precious. And so the mountains held their secrets no longer, but they remained safe in the hands of those who had learned to respect them. Jack had fulfilled his mission, and the village of Pine Ridge had been forever changed. From that day on, every child, every villager, and every wanderer who looked up at the towering peaks knew that courage, curiosity, and care could transform secrets into blessings and mysteries into lessons for all who were ready to learn.